Hello and welcome to Secrets Mystery Manor. I'm your host, Psychic Zelda Kelly. Warning: this podcast may contain sensitive material. It is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer and listening discretion is advised. Could there be anyone worse than Vlad Dracul, which is Count Dracula from Transylvania? Well, we may have found a young lady. Yes, that's right. Some of you may have never heard of her. But in the meantime, my name is Zelda Kelly. I'm with PsychicSecrets.com, and welcome to Secrets Mystery Manor. This is a very gruesome story and a very gruesome tale. And from what I'm understanding, this could be the reason that Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, and not because of Count Dracula or Vlad Dracul. Now, isn't that something? So from 1590 to 1610, Elizabeth Bathory allegedly, I like that, how they put that in there, don't you? Allegedly tortured and killed hundreds and hundreds of servant girls, women in Hungary, people that she kidnapped, people that she lured to her castle. And they're saying over 650 of these victims were recorded. Who were they recorded by? Well, they found a diary of hers in which she wrote down the names of each victim. My. It said that she ran out of peasant girls and servants and then started to kidnap those people or those young women from nobility, from nearby, I guess, kingdoms. She was a countess. In early 17th century, there were all of these, well, in present-day Slovakia, but rumors started circulating around the villages, and peasant girls looking for servant work were disappearing. And nobody knew why. None of the locals could figure it out, but many started pointing their fingers at the Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Her nickname was the Blood Countess because it seemed as though she was hungry in Hungary. Sorry for the pun. But she's from that area, Transylvania and the Ottomans. And isn't that funny that that is the same area where Vlad Dracul was? Very close in the time frame. She was actually, her parents were related. She was considered inbred. But she called her castle, and I cannot pronounce it, so just bear with me. All right. She received a castle as a wedding gift from her husband, the Hungarian war hero. Now, I can't pronounce this one either. I'm going to try. Forgive me for butchering this. Ferenc Nadasdy. That's close enough. We're just going to call him Ferenc, okay? So Mr. Ferenc, King Ferenc, Count Ferenc, in 1578 had become the chief commander of the Hungarian army. And he was on a campaign against the Ottoman Empire. You see the correlation between Vlad Dracul? He did the same thing. Left his wife in charge of his vast estate and governing the local populace. She had a lot of power go to her head. That is for absolute sure. So at first, all appeared to have been going well under Elizabeth Bathory's leadership and rule. But time started rolling on, and rumors that Bathory tortured her servants began to spread, and it spread through the villages. And when Bathory's husband died in 1604, these views became much, much more widespread, and people started to point the finger, and man, oh man, was it dramatic. The killings started to become more and more and get worse and worse. And not only was it young girls, it was also women who entered the castle. They were not permitted to leave. As of today, she is infamously remembered as the Blood Countess. And it's because she was accused, allegedly, you know how that is, of killing 650 girls and women in the Kingdom of Hungary. If this is true, which I believe some of it is from everything that I've dug around and nosed around and looked after, she is most likely the most prolific and vicious female serial killer of all time. But not everybody is convinced that she is guilty of these crimes. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. Elizabeth Bathory was born August 7th of 1560 in Hungary. She had a noble family. She knew a privileged life from an early age. And basically, some are saying that that is what fueled this really horrible lifestyle that she really wanted to have. So, according to the documentation, the witnesses, and those who investigated, and yes, there's an investigation coming, the crimes of everything took place between 1590 and 1610. And after her husband's death, everything, well, that was after 1604, it just really, really amped up. She really turned the volume up and basically said that she targeted poor young girls and young women and lured them to her castle with the promise of work as a servant. But she didn't stop. And she wasn't going to stop. And I think that she would have gone on for years and years and years. Basically, she lured other daughters of the gentry who had been sent to the castle for schooling and education. And she also kidnapped local girls in the area that would never, ever, 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 ever go to the castle with their own free will. So she evaded the law because people started becoming very suspicious of her. I mean, after all, right? People go to the castle. You say, hey, I'm going to go up to the castle. I'm going to be a new servant, or I'm going to get an education, and you never return and you never hear from these people. Well, people, families, and even nobility started becoming more and more suspicious. She killed multiple victims of noble birth, and that's what got the authorities interested. They should have been interested with all the others, but the fact that she started getting the authorities interested because she was killing girls of nobility, well, that's a different story. Now, it takes a very, very interesting term here. A very interesting sideways path, if you will. So there was a Hungarian king, Matthias II, and he was informed of all this was going on, and he kept watching and watching and watching. He sent his high-ranking representative, Georgi. I can't even pronounce his last name, forgive me, so we're just going to call him Georgi. He sent Georgi to investigate, and Georgi now collected evidence from over 300 witnesses who basically said there was so much horrifying activity going on in this castle, and charged Elizabeth Bathory for doing all these heinous crimes. Oh my gosh, it was just shocking, extremely shocking. The tortured women and girls were unspeakable. So here's the part. You heard the disclaimer in the beginning, and I know a lot of you like to hear this, so we're going to talk about it. But this is the part, if you don't like to hear about the muck and the mire and the mayhem and the gore, click off or click ahead. Okay, we're just going to give you a time. Okay, here we go for the rest of us. She burned her victims with hot irons. She stuck needles under their fingernails, beat them to death with clubs. She would wait until the weather was freezing, like it would be below zero as far as we would know, and pour cold water over her victims and shove them out into the freezing cold with no clothes on. Now, that's torture. You can imagine. I can't even think about that. I don't even I sit with a sweater and an air conditioning, inside in 100-degree weather, right? Think about that. That's horrible. She would cover her victims with honey so the bugs would come and eat the honey and then eventually start eating them as well. This is the gross part now. Hang on. It's getting grosser and grosser. She would sew their lips together. Can you imagine? I had an ex-husband and probably wanted to do that with me. But she would then bite off chunks of flesh from their faces, and I can't say it, but their private parts. Yikes. There were witnesses who claimed that they saw this, and witnesses who said that her favorite way of torturing was using scissors. Oh, here we go. And she would mutilate these girls' bodies and faces, and she would then use these scissor type instruments, these knives and everything else, cut off their hands, their noses, and their private parts. And she would also take these scissors and sharp devices and cut her victims, the girls and the women's, would slice and cut the skin between their fingers. Oh my, yikes. When I read that, no. There were supernatural legends that surrounded these crimes. And basically, Elizabeth Bathory said that these spirits would come to her and tell her what to do and how to torture her victims. This is so close to Vlad Dracul, Count Dracula. You just kind of wonder. Even the time frame is a little bit close there. You wonder what was in the water in that area, right? How could this ever happen like this? So here's where everything starts getting weird. And close to Count Dracula, said that a lot of them, who are them? Okay, a lot of the people that accused Elizabeth Bathory of all this said that she was a vampire. Here we go. And there were other people, get ready, said that they saw her having sex with the devil. Well, she'd have to be doing something to kill 650 women and girls, right? Yikes. The most infamous accusation of them all said that Elizabeth Bathory would bathe in the blood of her victims because she wanted to maintain a youthful appearance. I can't even get that. Okay. So this is all very, dramatic, and even now it's horrible and dramatic, but can you imagine back in the 15 and 1600s what this would do? But she was a very, very wealthy woman after her husband's death. He left her all of these things. Now remember the investigator I told you about, Georgi, right? From King Matthias II. Well, he really started investigating because they really told him about all these crazy, crazy things. But now here it gets interesting. They ultimately charged Elizabeth Bathory with the death of 80 girls because those were the ones that they could really find evidence with of their names. And they did find the book, the diary of 650 totally. They're saying that the diary is a legend, but someone stole the diary and gave it to another kingdom. So they put Elizabeth Bathory on trial, and she had, here we go, alleged accomplices that worked as wet nurses for the Countess children. And they were convicted of witchcraft and burned at the stake. Wow, this whole area is just like crazy, right? What on earth? She was spared, Elizabeth Bathory was spared only because of her nobility. But here's what they did with her. They spared her from an execution, but they bricked her up in a room. They isolated her, bricked her up in a room in the castle that her husband left her, that she called home, and she remained under house arrest for the next 4 years, and she died in 1614. But I don't think it's so cut and dried. I think there was another motive, and I think the other motive was political, power, and greed. And I think they really amped up. Now, I'm not saying that she was innocent, because I don't think that she was. But I think that this was used against her because King Matthias II owed Bathory's late husband. And then after her late husband passed away, King Matthias II owed Elizabeth Bathory a very, very large amount of money. Matthias basically said he wasn't going to pay it to a woman. He was not going to pay this. He was not going to do that at all because her husband died and he did not recognize her as the nobility and the power over her own kingdom where she was. So they said this is what fueled all of this investigation by Georgi. It fueled all these things to incriminate the Countess and multiple crimes. And he never gave her the opportunity to defend herself in the court. Now that sounds a little on the hokey side, right? Hello? Whatever. So testimonies came from witnesses that were, they were intimidated and basically said that they called for the death penalty. But Elizabeth Bathory's family intervened and basically said that it was politically motivated, and that's why this happened to Elizabeth Bathory, that they walled her up, bricked her up in a part of the castle. So how does this all end? She dies in 1614. Well, the kingdom falls apart. There's no more nobility, no more lands, and King Matthias of Hungary takes over. So put the story together. So this is pretty interesting, pretty compelling, and I'll tell you, if it is actually true, it's wild, crazy, horrific. But the only ones who'll ever know are the ghosts of the castle of those victims of Elizabeth Bathory. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We so do appreciate you. We thank you so much. We thank Psychic Secrets for giving us this wonderful platform in which we can bring these very paranormal, creepy, mysterious, crazy stories to you weekly. I want to thank you for stopping by. We love to have you. And I guess I will see you again. That's right. In the next video. Thank you so much for being here with me. I appreciate you. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. I just love this. Don't you?